Nestled on the western coast of Africa, the Gambia, known for its stunning beaches and vibrant culture, paints a picture of paradise. But behind this idyllic facade lies a nation grappling with deep-seated socio-economic challenges. Poverty casts a long shadow over the lives of many, while unemployment remains stubbornly high. This is a story about those systemic issues. Over the next few minutes, we're going to meticulously dissect 7 critical issues that are not just holding the Gambia back, but actively dragging it towards a future that frankly looks pretty bleak. These 7 critical issues will make the Gambia worse each year, making life in the Gambia extremely much more difficult. It's about shining a light on these issues, sparking a conversation, and hopefully inspiring action. Because the Gambia, despite its challenges, deserves a brighter future. And it's up to all of us, both within and outside the country, to fight for it. Let's talk about leadership. No, not the kind you read about in self-help books with a picture of a bald eagle on the cover. We're talking about the kind of leadership that's supposed to guide a nation towards prosperity, not personal gain. The kind that understands that prioritizing short-term political wins over long-term economic reforms is like choosing to eat the seeds of your crops instead of planting them. In the Gambia, it often feels like the national budget is a game of musical chairs with ministries and departments scrambling for a shrinking pool of resources. And who gets the biggest slice of the pie? You guessed it. The guys who control the music. Essential sectors like education, healthcare, and infrastructure are often left with the crumbs, while pet projects and initiatives designed to consolidate power receive a disproportionate share of the funding. The Gambian government cares more about politics as he is regularly spending lavishly in getting people of interest to join his party, despite the Banjul hospital lacking adequate water and the high number of preventable deaths introduced by chronic underfunding. Buying cars for politicians and top judges in a bid to stay in power instead of providing adequate dialysis machine to the Banjul hospital, which used to have just one working kidney dialysis machine, left at the mercy of few Gambians who donated them to the hospital, or buying heparin, a blood-thinning medication to dialysis patients whom many can't afford. This nonchalant behavior and lack of investment in crucial areas has a ripple effect throughout the entire economy. Think of it like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. Sure, you might be able to stack a few bricks, but eventually the whole thing is going to come crashing down. Imagine a Gambia where leaders prioritize the needs of their people over their own political ambitions. A Gambia where economic policies are crafted with a long-term vision, not just the next election cycle in mind. It's going to require a fundamental shift in the way things are done, a rejection of the status quo, and a commitment to putting the interests of the nation above all else. Benjamin Franklin once famously said that in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Well, he clearly never visited the Gambia because here, the only thing certain about taxes is that they're going up. Again, it's like a cruel game of whack-a-mole, except instead of moles, it's your hard-earned dalasi disappearing down a hole. And the hammer is the Gambian government, gleefully whacking away with reckless abandon. Look, I understand that taxes are a necessary evil. They're the price we pay for a functioning society, for roads without potholes the size of small cars, for hospitals that don't smell like a combination of bleach and despair, you know, the basics. But when taxes become an unbearable burden, when they stifle economic growth and leave citizens struggling to make ends meet, it's time to ask some serious questions. The problem in the Gambia isn't just the amount of taxes being collected, it's also where that money is going, or more accurately, where it's not going. Instead of being invested back into the economy, into education, healthcare, or infrastructure, it often seems to vanish into a black hole of government spending, never to be seen again. Inflation in the Gambia reached a record 18.2% in 2023, driven by imported food inflation and massive tax increments, which left more than 25,000 people falling below the international poverty line in 2023 alone, as per the World Bank. Higher taxes are a major culprit, pushing more and more people into poverty at an alarming rate like never seen before. It's just like a switch. With a press of a button, poverty accelerates. What the Gambia needs is a fair and transparent tax system, one that encourages investment, stimulates economic growth, and ensures that the tax burden is shared equitably. Until that happens, the only thing certain about the Gambia's future is that it's going to involve a lot more taxes, which will push more and more people into innate poverty, together with their children and generations to come. Let's talk about rising unemployment in the Gambia, shall we? It's a bit like the weather. Everyone talks about it, but nobody seems to know how to fix it. But unlike the weather, which is generally quite pleasant in the Gambia, the unemployment situation is about as pleasant as a root canal without anesthesia. The numbers are stark. Youth unemployment is sky high, and the overall unemployment rate is enough to make even the most optimistic economist reach for the antacids. And it's not just a matter of people not wanting to work. The Gambia has a young and vibrant population eager for opportunities, but those opportunities are about as rare as a sober night out in Serekunda. The lack of jobs is a ticking time bomb, and the fuse is getting dangerously short. When people can't find work, they can't support themselves or their families. Poverty rates rise, crime becomes more prevalent, and social unrest simmers just below the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Imagine a generation of young people robbed of the opportunity to reach their full potential, trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. It's not just a tragedy for those individuals, it's a disaster for the entire country. The future of the nation, quite literally, depends on it. They say that education is the key to success. Well, in the Gambia, the education system is a bit like a rusty old key that's been sitting at the bottom of a drawer for decades. It might technically be a key, but it's not going to open any doors anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, there are dedicated and passionate teachers in the Gambia who are doing their best with limited resources. But the reality is that the education system is chronically underfunded, overcrowded, and ill-equipped to prepare students for the challenges of the 21st century. Imagine going to a school where textbooks are older than your parents, where classrooms are so crowded you can barely breathe, where you are asked to learn about the body parts of a mosquito, where you are asked to memorize your subjects only to end up being confused like a 90-year grandma with dementia, and where the most advanced piece of technology is a chalkboard that's been used so much it's practically worn out. A strong education system is the foundation upon which a prosperous and equitable society is built. The children of the Gambia deserve nothing less. Let's talk about the Gambian economy, shall we? It's a bit like a one-hit wonder, except instead of a catchy tune, it's got peanuts. Lots and lots of peanuts. Now, there's nothing wrong with peanuts. They're delicious, versatile, and they make a mean peanut butter. But when your entire economy is reliant on a single export commodity, you're essentially putting all your eggs in one very fragile basket. And trust me, when that basket breaks, it's going to make a hell of a mess. The fact that the Gambia has no export base shows that the country is not a producing nation, which can be very scary. The lack of economic diversification in the Gambia is like trying to run a marathon on a diet of nothing but peanuts. You might have a whole lot of energy for the first few miles, but eventually you're going to hit a wall. And when you do, it's going to be ugly. The Gambia needs to diversify its economy, and it needs to do it yesterday. It's time to break free from the shackles of peanut dependence and build a more resilient and sustainable economic future. Imagine this. You've spent years, maybe even decades, building a life for yourself in a foreign land. You've worked hard, paid your taxes, and contributed to your community. But then, one day, you're told you're no longer welcome. You're deported back to your country of origin, a place you barely recognize, stripped of your livelihood, and separated from your loved ones. This is the harsh reality faced by many Gambians who have been deported from countries around the world. They return home, often traumatized and disillusioned, to a country grappling with its own set of challenges, and a country that prepares nothing for them to hang on to. The Gambia is facing a deportation crisis, and it's time to call on the government to put an end to this. These deportations are not just heartbreaking stories of individual hardship. They represent a significant economic and social challenge for the Gambia. Imagine a wave of people returning to a country already struggling with high unemployment and limited resources. It means recognizing that these deportees are not criminals but fellow citizens who deserve a chance to rebuild their lives. This is a humble request to please support our work by liking this video and subscribing to the African Pacific YouTube channel, a Gambian-owned channel looking into the pressing issues of the motherland that are often ignored by mainstream media. Please show your support by liking and subscribing. Thank you so much. Let's talk about institutions in the Gambia, shall we? No, not the mental kind. Although after discussing the state of the economy, education, and everything else, you might be forgiven for thinking otherwise. I'm talking about the institutions that are supposed to serve and protect the citizens of the Gambia, the government, the judiciary, law enforcement, the grown-ups in the room. Except, in the Gambia, It often feels like the grown-ups have left the building, leaving a bunch of unsupervised toddlers in charge. Corruption, lack of transparency, and a blatant disregard for the rule of law have eroded public trust in these institutions. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of quicksand. No matter how much effort you put in, it's all going to come crashing down eventually. The Gambia needs to strengthen its institutions, root out corruption, and restore public trust. Until that happens, the Gambia will remain trapped in a vicious cycle of corruption, impunity, and underdevelopment. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Many thanks. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From the challenges of unemployment and poverty to the urgent need for educational reform and economic diversification, it's clear that the Gambia faces an uphill battle. But it's not a battle it has to fight alone. The first step towards solving a problem is acknowledging that it exists. By shedding light on these issues, we hope to spark a conversation with the government, to encourage critical thinking, and to inspire action. Because the future of the Gambia depends on the engagement of its citizens, both at home and abroad. We need to move beyond simply identifying the problems and start exploring solutions. This requires open and honest dialogue, a willingness to challenge the status quo, and a commitment to holding our leaders accountable. Together, we can make a difference.